Hey, welcome, Mike Miller, live from Los Angeles.
Hello, everybody out there in internet land.
Hey Mike,
So glad to have you.
Happy to be here. Thanks
that
for having
was
me.
a pretty impressive intro. You with all those other musicians, fellow musicians of yours, and you're the main on guitar, right? You played
I was
almost with everybody in the fusion jazz rock scene.
I've done a lot of that kind of playing and been very fortunate in my opportunities to do so.
Well,
I'm looking
that
forward to
clips that we
more.
played in the beginning, that was kind of, quite some years ago. Um, but as you said, you really played with everybody. If we're checking, your discography, it's kind of, in the area where you live, you played with everybody in this fusion world. So how did you get into this fusion, universe?
I started listening to when I was a kid. My father was a trumpet player, and my brothers and I all played bass in his band as we came up. And the piano player was a big jazz head, and he was playing me stuff, when I was listening to, like, the Monkees and stuff like that. He was playing me Bitches Brew, Miles Davis, and Bill Evans stuff. And some things would resonate with me, and some kind of went over my head. But Bitches Brew really kind of stopped me in my tracks, and I began to like listen to a lot of the players on that. Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, Airto, McLaughlin, for sure, big time. He really changed my whole attitude about what you could do. and and then I moved to Colorado. I was just kind of pursuing that kind of music and trying to figure out how to play it, because I was coming from a very pop music, songs, blues kind of background. But I was very interested in this kind of music, so I started to school myself. Where I grew up in Dakota, very few people came to play there that were doing that kind of music. And so you would have to go out and find these recordings. So I would find a record store that had, I remember hearing Pat Martino and Chick Corea on an album by a saxophone player named Eric Kloss.
Mhm.
And Pat Martino blew my mind so hard that I went to the store and I bought everything I could find with Pat Martino and Chick. And I just started getting this and just buying it unheard. And I found a store that had like early ECM things, the Chick Corea improvs, and Facing You and Keith Jarrett. And it just, it was like, it was get richer and richer. So I moved to Colorado to be in more of a city, thriving music community. And it was really good. The first week I was there, Chick was there with the First Electric Return to Forever band with Bill Connors. And I was there, and it was for a week. And I was there every night and met the band and met Chick and his manager. And Bill came up to the house and played. And the next week, Airto was there. So it was like, oh, this is a good move. This is really good. It was just coming in like a river, And then after a few years there, I had a chance to go to Los Angeles to record, and did it again, moved again, just grabbed all my stuff and moved again, and tried to surround myself with people who were obviously more just better, people I could learn from.
Yeah.
And so I was always involved in that and trying to find out, to work on my weak spots, to expand what I could do, and ended up with a lot of people with similar ideas about playing. And there was a lot of just cutting your teeth, they call it, and so yeah, I just kept at it. And when I finally was able to play with, I kept running into Chick in weird situations.
Really?
That time in Colorado, and then later I had worked with a great trumpet player named Alan Vizzuti, was on a couple Chick records, and Chick would show, and it was the same management, and Chick would show up at a gig, or he would come to a recording we did. And then I was working in Europe with Koinonia, with David Laboriel, and Chick was there with the trio. And I just kept running into the guy, and finally got a chance to play with him. And it was like, you know, a dream. I never would have dreamt that I would ever get to play with the guy. And here he is with a keyboard strapped on, coming over to trade chords with you, with that grin.
Little duel. Yeah.
With a grin on his face, like, okay, let's go. So it was a great opportunity.
So was that kind of a coincidence? Or how did that happen? Did he just, you know, came up with, hey, what do you think about to play with this band? Or you?
They were auditioning for Electric Band 2, and man, it was like a lot of people played. I went and played. I think we played for 2 days, and I didn't hear anything. So I thought, well, that went away, you know. And finally, they called it and said, "Okay, we start Monday. Ready?" And I think I was on a beach in Mexico, thinking, "Okay, you're ready to go." But yeah, it was.
Well, that would be an audition where all guitar players from Los Angeles might have shown up.
And all over the world. I mean, like, you know.
But it's also a hard time, right? You know, with that kind of, you know, history, or already, you know, I don't know how many albums did they release with Electric Band with these fantastic players, and then doing kind of, now we are doing Mark II, or, you know, version 2. It's kind of you know, a challenge, right? Did you feel like that this is kind of dangerous challenge, because it can also fail, that, you know, everybody would say, hey, guys, you know, this guy.
Well, it was a challenge to try to make it different, because I love some of the stuff that the Electric Band did, but it was kind of a parade of soloists. It was like, well, you know, this solo, and then this amazing solo, and this amazing solo. And I think what we were trying to do was more like a group, where the whole group would move. When it would move, the whole group would move. And so it was a challenge to, you know, come in and into something especially so similarly named, and feel like, well, you know, well, but.
When you told the story of Chick, probably forgot to call you after he decided that he will take you into the band. Frank Gambale told the same thing. He was very nervous playing first time for Chick, and then he went home, and Chick said, "I'll call you in a couple of days, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, nothing." And then he had the nerve to call Chick, and Chick, yeah, you are in. Didn't I tell you? Did I forget to tell you? Tour next week, something, recording, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's Chick, but he was such a nice man. I had the chance to meet him once, and I was a big, well, I am still a big follower, and I'm so sad that he left us last year, and I was completely flashed.
What a body of work! I mean, when I look back at like all the orchestral stuff, and the Gary Burton stuff, and the early hymn, and the stuff with Miles, and you know, and the solo stuff, it's just astounding how much. And it became very apparent on the road that he pushed himself so hard. Like, he really expected, you know, he pushed the band very hard. We would be out there doing 14 one-nighters in a row around Europe and South America, and traveling and doing sound checks and rehearsals and the travel every day. But nobody, he pushed himself so hard. And he would put himself, if there was a weak spot in his playing, he would attack it. I made the mistake of saying one day that, you know, I've never really learned how to play things like, oh, I don't know, like Giant Steps or Moment's Notice. They seem to be more like vehicles for, you know, keyboards and, you know, saxophone, the instruments they were written on. And the next day I went to rehearsal. He said, hey, we're going to play Moment's Notice starting tomorrow. So let's rehearse. It was like, you know, I stumbled, but it was like so this is what you do. This is how you get to that level, is if you find a weak spot, you don't avoid it for the rest of, for the rest of your life. You attack it, and you can do something about it. It was a great lesson. Yeah, he was
so proud that I met him once. This was in 2004 when he had a little bit more weight and I had a little bit less. But he was a teacher, right? And when he calls then Moment's Notice, he had you in his head, and he said, "Okay, I'm going to challenge him, and he's going to learn it." He gave everything away, all his knowledge, and you want to learn something here. That's how I do it.
Yeah, he was very generous in his, in his thinking, and just like, one of my oddball memories from the Chick touring was one day in the bus somewhere in the United States. He was playing chess with everybody, and he was killing everybody, as you can imagine, because he's, intellectually really, he was deep water. So he was killing everyone playing chess, and finally it was my turn, and I hadn't played for years, and I was like, oh boy, this is going to be bad. So he starts playing, and he's absolutely wiping me out. He's taken all my big pieces. I'm down to like, I don't know, a couple of minor pieces and some pawns, and he's moving in for the kill. And in his haste to crush me, he overlooked one thing. And I saw for a second, I thought, is that really a checkmate sitting there? And I moved my piece and I said, checkmate. And he kind of went, and he said, okay, let's play again. I said, no, I'm not for a while.
One-time experience, one-time chance.
Let me have this for a few days, because it'll never happen again.
Great story. Yeah, Chick has had so many projects in his life. You too, when I look at your discography on your website, and I think that's only part of it that you really did probably. There's so many different artists that you played with. Did you, when you go into the studio, are you then ready to go? I'm Mike Miller. I give you what I can do, or do you adapt to what is maybe asked or the style of the artist you're recording with?
I love. Different styles, and why does this work? Why in a country western song I can play all this stuff and it's like but when you finally go it's like, oh yeah, that's it. That I'm fascinated by how these styles work, and if I'm working for someone, I really like to listen to their piece of music and think, what could I play that will make this song even more what it is? Like, what will I, because it's easy, if you go into a session and you go in and play a bunch of stuff you've been working on in your garage, you ruin the song, you'll never get called again, and it's completely inappropriate. So I like to find, so there are certain, gigs where I can play all kind, can really play some crazy stuff and really like mix it up and get very, intense with it. And then there's other things. If it's some kind of, beautiful ballad, it's like, well, how do I tell a story? And that was always something that stuck with me in my playing, is that my favorite solos were like a story. They had a beginning and a middle and a thread and an ending. There was like a story, and it was like, because there's a playing that I'm not really crazy about, where it almost sounds like you're just trying to avoid wrong notes. Mm-hmm. Just playing a lot of stuff, and as long as I don't hit a wrong note, it's all good. But that might be appropriate sometimes, but I love styles, so I've worked at trying to play. When I was working with Natalie Cole, it was like, well, she's playing this Nat Cole stuff, which is beautiful, kind of big band stuff. What would be the right thing to play? Not like what can I be? Show them how clever I am. So I really like that.
Yeah, I think we talked about that one in another episode about this tendency in music, for several years that everything need to be very, on the grid and totally clean and totally arranged, and the freedom was kind of disappearing. And at least my feeling is that it came back, that even in pop and other areas, there's more dynamic and freedom in the players and bands playing as it was, in the 90s and beginning in the 2000 years.
Yeah,
that's
like,
my impression. I don't know if you agree, but that's my feeling.
I think so too. I mean, something that comes to mind is the Robert Plant, Alison Krauss record they did some years ago with T-Bone Burnett producing, and it's like there's a lot of rough edges, but it's part of it. It sounds like a part of it. If you were to ask me my 10 favorite pieces of music, there's all kinds of mistakes, and Bob Dylan is dropping entire beats, and Keith Jarrett is grunting and singing like Jerry Lewis into the microphone, and it just it just doesn't matter. If there's something, it's like if there's something of value being stated, it doesn't matter at all. In fact, I like it.
Yeah.
In fact, I was watching some of this Beatles, like the Get Back stuff and some of the outtakes. I think it's if you thought that these songs just sprang forth from their heads full blown, like these beautiful, perfect pieces, I think everybody would quit. But the fact that you hear them working on it and working and working and coming up with a bridge that doesn't really work, and then they go back and they record it with that bridge, and then at some point someone must have said, I don't like this bridge, let's go do something else, and go keep on working at it. I think that's really, it was one of my favorite things about it.
In the documentary you see that at least Paul McCartney never gave up when he was standing there and humming fragments of Get Back, loner, and they're trying to find the words,
Yeah, and just throwing out a phrase.
Loretta Martin. How long did it take to come up with the name Martin? They had Sweet Loretta Marsh or whatever, and they tried, and it didn't feel right, and to find the right.
And the fact that they would just keep at it and keep, like it was. I was listening to it, thinking, listening to what they're doing, and I'm going, genius. You know what I mean? It would be like working hard to find these things. And then a great thing is the fact that they would know when they got a good one and stop searching. Because sometimes in my own playing, I find myself like, just, if you go into that search mode and you're looking and looking and looking, the point is to find something. It's not about just searching, because you could go on forever. And, that's why you have to find those little things that speak to you and hold on to them and realize when to stop. It's like when I was working with Chick, and we used to do these improvs, guitar and piano, and we would just improv. And he said one day, the real trick of this is to know when to stop, is to know when to make an ending. And it's like, so you have to, be on search mode, but you have to be aware of what's happening.
Did it become harder for you to find those spots during the decades, because you played so many things before? You discovered maybe a million things before, and the treasure is probably harder to find, or? Well,
I think that it is, especially like I've been playing for a long time. And so when you first start out, it's like, it's like new vistas every other day. There's like a new breakthrough, and it's like, oh my God, this is an amazing world. But after you've been doing it for some time, those come not so often. And it can, it's like you have to work on figuring out what there is, how I can love this thing, how I can really love playing. And that's as important as if you're good, if you're, can move around, not good, but I mean, facile or, technically you can, that's fine. But it's like to know when you find something good is that's where it's really at, I think.
And that can only be your own judgment. Listening to what you
right.
did and then say it's good or it's not good. Is
Right.
it final or is it genius? You know.
And I feel like if I can move myself, then maybe I can move someone else. But it's hard for me to. I don't have a very good game face for that. It's like if it's hard for me to just fake it and play something that I think people will start bopping around to. It's like if I can move, I want to move somebody. And if I can move myself, then maybe I can move somebody else.
Yeah. You write a lot of. Sorry, Gary.
Yeah, I just wanted to. So, is that something that you it might something that you have not learned but get inspired by people that like Gino Vanelli, or you played with Boz Scaggs, which are amazing songwriters. They have and arrangers, but my impression is that they still give the freedom that you described, to the players in the band to kind of evolve with the song and not just say, hey, the solo need to be like this, no question.
Yeah, I feel like when I go into a session and the guy is really restrictive about what to play, I start to feel a little bit like, well, if you really know what this is, you don't even need me here. You could just do it if you really know. I mean, I assume that you hired me because I've been doing this a long time and I might have some good ideas. It's like when I play with so many great drummers, and there's no way I could tell a really great drummer what to play, because with his experience, he's going to have, I might give him a direction or an example of what mood, but it's like, there's no way you could like dictate to a guy who's been doing it their whole life what they should do.
Yeah.
And you get probably hired because people know you have a good taste. You will do the right thing, and the producer doesn't have to tell you exactly what to do. That's probably the idea when hiring somebody like you or Vinny Colaiuta for a record. Then I know what I get. Well, I hope that I get it. No.
Well, when I played for Boz, I think they kind of thought I might be a kind of a jazz guy, and that might not lend itself to the kind of music we're playing. But like I said in the beginning, I started off with songs. What really drew me into playing music was playing songs, and especially John Lennon songs. So at this point where I get to go back to to playing songs, and what's the story? What's the story with this, how can I make this lean more, the way it already wants to lean? But Boz has been very open to letting me try things out. But again, I'm always thinking about, well, what's really appropriate for this music? I mean, it's like, I don't think anybody here wants to hear a big shred fest, especially me.
Some guys do.
I know.
But yeah, what about some music?
But or like with Gino, they had very strict ideas about harmonically where it should go. But once I was actually playing my own parts and not like coming in playing music that had been recorded before, it was a great challenge to, tell my story, tell a little story. And we worked together for 11 years. We did a bunch of records, and I'm very proud and learned a lot from those guys about control. So like really controlling the sound, because it was hard disk recording. So it was like,
yeah.
Remember what you did on that solo 7 times, the 7th pass back? It's like, no. But I became better at it, and it was like, oh yeah, okay. Because then you have to punch it in, and there's no room, and there's only one track, and it's like, you got to get it right, and it has to be the right sound. It's got to be the right pickup. You got to have the pick at the right angle so it sounds right to make this merge.
Yeah, and
so I learned a lot from that stuff.
The result was pretty good music when you listen to it today. To Gino Vanelli, it's still cuts through. It doesn't seem to be outdated.
Yeah, it's very.
It still sounds fresh.
Great writing, and his brother Joe was a genius with the sounds. I mean, he was so overseeing the voicings and the sound of things. You know, really, it was a great period of learning.
Yeah. So as you said, you know, as I mentioned, the Beatles and songs, John Lennon. Is this something that inspired you to become a professional musician? When
it was such a lofty goal. I mean, back in South Dakota, it was like my first thought. Once I decided that I would really like to try to do this because I had an aptitude for it, and and it was really like pretty much the only thing I was good at, and I loved to do it.
But actually, you played bass, right, in the beginning? Is that true? So
yeah,
that was a
played,
family thing, or how did that happen? It was.
Well, my father was a trumpet player, and there were 4 brothers, and there were no bass players in South Dakota.
So you are the bass player.
All of us, as we came up, my oldest brother Mark, and as we would come up, and as the oldest would get good enough to get other work, he'd bring in the new guy. And so we all went to the same thing, of the same teachers, the same, and a pretty wide, you know, repertoire of songs. I mean, at the time, you're a kid and you think it's all corny, but it was like we were playing everything from like really like goofy polkas to Jobim songs and Bacharach songs and some Beatles songs and a lot of standards and a lot of and Dixieland. I mean, it was like all kinds of different music with no lines about what was good or not. It was just, this is, you know, it was like this exists. You could ignore it and say this is better than this, but why? It's just your opinion. It doesn't matter. These musics exist. And I think one of the great things for me in that situation was the ear training, because my father would say, we're going to play the Darktown Strutters Ball. And I would say, what's that? And he would say, it's in F. 1, 2, 3, 4, and off you would go. So you had to listen and develop your ear so you could well, if it's an F, I'll start in F. And then over a period of some learning, I got the idea. I started to realize that a lot of these kind of American songs, they will move 1 or 2 ways. They're going to go to this chord, or they might go to this chord. And if they go to this chord, they're probably going to go around the circle of fourths. And you start to like absorb how, you know, it really, like, if I play this second, I know there's a chord coming. If I play this note, there's a good chance it'll be in both chords. Mm. And then maybe by beat 2, I can figure out what chord it is and go with it. So it was a great ear training and kind of a schooling on how harmony works.
Mm. I think learning by ear, listening to records and try to figure out what those guys are doing there might be the best way to learn music, because every great musician like you told us this. Chick Corea said it, that he was listening to Bud Powell with his stereo speakers behind him on the piano, and he tried to figure out what he was doing. Yeah. And you say that all those songs, the Beatles and stuff like this, and later this jazz rock things, I think it might be the best way to learn music, by trying to imitate, you know.
Yeah.
And I still wonder why teachers don't do it that way all the time.
Yeah, well, it's surprising how, you know, a lot of the things that when I do the little bit of teaching I do, I pretty much do the same lesson every time. And a lot of it is the ear training about chords, like a song, like any song that you could play, unless it's actually called, you know, symphony in D minor, you should be able to play it in any key, even then, because it's like they're all, you know, the scales are all built the same. So it became my dad's piano player was very helpful to like show me, you know, when you're playing this song, what degree of the scale does the melody start on?
Mhm.
And I thought, and that's something they don't really talk about. But if you know the degree of the scale the song starts on, and let's say it starts on 6, then anyone who starts singing the song and they start saying the first note is a B flat, you know that you're in D flat. You immediately know. And that's kind of like, when you do that on a bandstand or in a session, people think you're like pulling rabbits out of your hat or something. It's like, no, it's just the math of diatonic music. So I think you're right. I think playing along with things and trying to pick them out, and also just being able to hear a note and you can go play that note, or they hear a little phrase, you can play that phrase, hear the solo, you can play that solo. That's like, seems like magic to the outside, but it's really just your ear,
Yeah. So I think, Ralph, we need some music, right? That's what you wanted to say 5 minutes ago, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
so
right.
before we talk,
we
need to talk about your upcoming album. But I think before we talk about that and a bit more, should we just listen to something? I think it should be okay to have, to listen a minute. It will be released in March, right?
Yes.
And what I think what's perfectly matching about the conversation is about the songs and the way you described it is the first song, because it's an album from a guitar player. It starts with a bass solo, right? So, and kind of this song concept that you just described. I think that's pretty nice. So let's hear some seconds from your new album, and then we talk about it.
Very good.
Sorry, that was a bit more than 30 seconds, but
That's good.
I think it gives a good impression what's coming, right? And I'm really surprised, that if you hear that intro, you would not think, hey, this is a guitar player album, but it's such a great song and arrangement. So that will come in March, I think March 11th this year, on Blue Canoe Records. And you could co-produce that. Okay, we don't have it. We only have the, exactly.
And this.
Trust.
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 And correct me if I'm wrong, it's your third album or fourth under your own name, or was that a wrong impression? I don't think you had too many on your own
No,
name.
it's not been there hasn't been a lot there. The first thing I did was a thing with Ralph Humphrey and Jim Lacefield, a trio. We were teaching at a music school which became MI, Musicians Institute, and they were going to start a label, and they got the record company truck down there, and we recorded a bunch of stuff, and then they decided not to do a label, and so we just put it out. And I've done a couple other ones. I did one called Save the Moon, and I did one called World Goes Round. And then, so this is my fourth real solo one. I've done some other things with two guitars, some a bunch of different projects, but this is really my.
Is this something?
I don't know,
Is this something that came out of the situation of the past 2 years? That let's take the time and collect what have been collected over the years and put something together, or what was the initial thing to start this?
Well, I've been working on a lot of these recordings with different bands. There's 4 different bands on the album, and Gary Novak, great drummer that I worked with Chick with, really was a big influence on making this and getting this rolling, because he booked a session of me playing my songs with Jeff Babko and Jimmy Earl. And we did 4 songs in like a day, and then I did some dubs on them, and I had these 4, and I had I had some things I'd recorded at home that I got Chad Wackerman and Jimmy Johnson to play on. And then I did a thing that was just going to be a demo that I sent to my friend Mike Shapiro, and he took that thing and he said, "Could I work on this? Can I produce this thing?" And he sent it back to me with all this great vocals and keyboards and all this percussion on it. He got Airto to play percussion on it, for God's sake, and then I did a couple things with my brother Terry up in my brother Terry Miller, who lives in San Francisco, great bass player, great. And
so he's the only one still playing. He was the last. He's the only one. He was the last brother, right?
He was the last victim. Yes, he was. And so it's 4 different bands, and Jimmy Haslip of the Yellowjackets that I've worked with, I've known forever, approached me and said, "I'm working with this label. What do you think about putting out an album?" And I said, "Well, I've got all this stuff." And I started sending him all these, different versions of things. He said, "Well, we can do about 10 of these. So what do you think about these 10? And I began to finish them up, because I'm always working on new material, but Jimmy really, made it possible for me to do this. And I'm so grateful for him, because I feel like I just passed a kidney stone. It's like these things will sit and just echo around my head forever. But once they're recorded and out, they stop their incessant, echoing. So
I think that's what several people told us that who released albums, co-produced or produced by Jimmy Haslip, that he is kind of this good resource, to put things together, to give you the right way through it and focus on the right things. I think we heard a lot.
Yeah, Jimmy was, this wouldn't have happened without Jimmy. He played on one song of one of these 10. And he's a guy that just, I've known forever. And he just keeps showing up with good things for me. Always just been a very positive force and strong musician.
Yeah.
Did you
he was responsible for me I got to do a Yellowjackets record after Robin Ford left. I think maybe their second record. Then Jimmy kind of opened the door for me to be able to do that. Yeah. Get a song on the record,
But the players on that album,
ago, right?
Pardon?
Mirage à Trois, is this from 1983 or 4?
Yes.
I believe mid 80s. That's a while ago.
Yeah. Early, yeah. It is a while ago.
You also play with I don't know if you have ever met him personally, but you play with a German musician or composer together, and Mitch Foreman, which you also worked with quite a lot, is there involved, and Jimmy too. It's MSM Schmidt.
Yes,
from Bremen. You played on
that
3
music
of his
is
records.
really challenging and cool, and I'm happy to be involved in that too. Great list of players, and all remotely. I've never met him.
Yeah. But as you said, players. You mentioned Gary Novak, but there's also Jimmy Earl. He was also playing in Electric Band. with you. These guys, have you been, kind of playing very close together before Electric Band? So is this kind of a year-long relationship and collaboration?
Not before the Electric Band. I think I'd played with Gary a little bit. Yeah, actually, I played with Gary. We used to have a group called Anonymous. It was Albert Wing, great sax player, Brandon Fields, also sax, Walt Fowler, Jimmy Johnson, and Gary. I believe it was Gary. And it was kind of like a power trio with three horns.
Yeah, I was about to say that. It's kind of, that's also the people that go on and off in the baked potato playing, all this great stuff,
Yeah, it's like a rotating cast of characters. It's like like a Christopher Guest movie. They keep pulling in, But yeah, it's quite a roster of players.
Yeah.
Music you played in your career is, most of it looks very difficult from the musicians you played with. Is there one project which would that you can say about that was really the most ambitious project or job I ever had? I'm thinking of maybe the Frank Zappa orchestra thing that you did. Could have been something else.
I was listening to Frank since I was really young, man. My brother Dave gave me Uncle Meat.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that was even possible. You know what I mean? I was like, because where I grew up was a very isolated place. It wasn't like the big city where you could go hear a lot of different musics. You had to have the door open for you, or at least be aware that there were things out there. So I was working on a lot of this music, like in high school at my talent show, I played 2 Frank Zappa pieces, with different bands. And I was playing a lot of this music before I ever left Dakota, and then went to, ended up meeting with a bunch of the guys who'd been playing on Roxy and elsewhere. And they were playing that material. So I learned some of that material. And then that was with the Fowler Brothers Air Pocket Band, which was like this big 5 horns, just a great band, really oddball material of all kinds. And later it led to me being able to do these, a couple of different Zappa offshoot bands. I never worked with Frank himself, but I did some things with the Grandmothers, which was like Don Preston, Jimmy Carl Black,
You played with George Duke?
Yeah.
He played also in the Zappa band
for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
So I loved Frank's music. And some of that was definitely the most challenging things I've ever played. And to me, I'm not like a big sports fan, but that to me, playing that kind of music, I think I get the rush that sports guys get. If you would finish one of those pieces, you'd finish the piece and you'd go, oh my God, we got through that. You believe that we got through that incredibly complicated time thing where it's like a puzzle, but there's always a great payoff. Like one of the things I loved about Frank's music is that it could get very, very technical, but there'd always be a payoff. Like some things I played, they're very technical, and you finish it and you feel like, yeah, okay, you got it right. But it's like whether it connects with your emotions or your sense of humor, maybe not,
That's a trick,
but
yeah.
I love playing Frank. Love playing Frank.
But coming back to your album, as we talked about this, kind of complex and, at least, maybe you would say, no, that's not a complex one. There's the track I really liked, with Chet Wackerman, that has also this kind of shifting grooves and take it, it's kind of, is this something, the rhythm stuff that came from Chet Wackerman, or are you also sometimes, going into this, hey, let's do something complex rhythm-wise?
Well, what I used to love about the music when I was coming up and kind of, absorbing things like Mahavishnu Orchestra, other Jan Hammer stuff, Weather Report, Chick Corea stuff, was the fact that it could be in an odd time signature, but you didn't feel that it was like a quiz or a test. It was like there was a melodic thing that took you through it, where you could be a part of it. Even if you had no idea what the time was, there was something that could lead you through this little journey. And I love that. And so in my music, like when I'm writing charts, I go, oh, I didn't know this was in 5. I forgot that this is kind of complicated, because I'm trying to find a way to draw people into it. And I mean, like, who thinks about when you hear All You Need Is Love, that it's in 5? People don't think about that. But there were all kinds of things like that. Or, in a day in the life, where I'm looking for an acoustic guitar I can play. A day in the life, and they're doing this, that thing, it's a 5-bar phrase. There's all these odd things that are in pop music that as long as no one tells you it's in 5, you won't.
As long as it is the flow, then
it's the story, part of the story, and I love that. And I've tried to, hide the fact that it's in an odd time signature and make something, some sort of melody that carries you through, or a rhythm that's very, you can feel.
Yeah, I was listening to Peter Gabriel's Salisbury Hill. Don't know if you know that number.
Yeah.
I never thought it was in 5 until I got in the band and they used to play it, and I found out, oh, it's in 5. It's the song. It has to be in 5, but
it doesn't matter. It doesn't even enter your head, because it's so strong that it's like, this is it. My usual joke when people start saying, "Is this, what's a time signature?" They say, "It's in 1."
That was.
Just keep that going, and you'll be okay.
So should we have another minute from your new album? The song I was talking about is Colvin. I'm not sure.
Yes.
It's not in 5, right?
The first section's in 5.
Yeah, we got it. let's have a quick look.
A lot of it's in 5. There's a couple sections that are in 5.
So
but like I said, I'm trying to hide it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's listen. It's the flow, right?
Yeah, I think it's like if the idea is strong, it's like, then who cares what time signature? If I can sing it, I don't really care.
But you know, a song like this, you know, what was the starting point to, you know, to compose and develop this song? It's the acoustic guitar, or it's the groove. So you know, what is the starting point?
That song is one where I kind of compiled it by working with a looper, and I would get these loops of like just the first section, you know, that and that first 8-bar section, and I would listen that, you know, I'd have that stored, and I would listen to it from time to time, and came up with the melody on it. And then over time, as I was looking like it needs another section, I would find this other section that was a similar tempo and kind of worked with it, and they would marry together. And then, you know, I like at some point I'd be looking for, there's got to be another release, like a bridge or something, and I'd find something that I thought was that would make friends with those two. And so it was kind of compiled from these pieces, and then as the framework was there, ideas started to come to me about a melody and a way to you know, like, you know, seam the different parts, to kind of seam them together. So that one was definitely from a like looper kind of stuff.
I think when I have seen you at the Baked Potato, you know, 10 years ago or such, you were also already, you know, doing this looper stuff. As far as I remember, I think that's not sure when this looper, you know, stuff started.
Yeah, I've been working with them for a long time, and I remember their Lexicon used to make a great one. It wasn't a lot of time, but the sound quality was very good. And I remember going to a NAMM show and going up to their booth and saying, "I love the Jam Man. Are you going to make one bigger?" And said, "Oh, we stopped making that because I think people didn't really know it wasn't a delay." And for me, it just became a great writing tool, a great songwriting tool.
Yeah, cool. Do you have a favorite guitar of yours that you would pick first, or is there a guitar brand that you love or work together with?
I've got a great old Strat. It's a 62 Strat that I did. It just feels really, I mean, it's got those great sounds, man. Like that, you know, Leo Fender, such a genius. He just plug one of these guitars into his amp with a little reverb, and it sounds great. I mean, and in fact, on the Boz Scaggs gig, I used that the most by far, because the Boz Scaggs thing is really about listening to these things and you go, what is it? You know, it was one other thing that I loved about doing this gig is that it was about what does it sound like? Like this song, you know, the story, there's that aspect of it. What's the story? But some of it was the guitar. Like, what does it sound like? What's he playing? Is it, if it's a Strat, what pickup is he using? And where is he hitting the pick on the strings, and how hard? And it became about the sound of it, which was a great different kind of challenge for me, because I'd done so many kind of note heavy gigs where it's like amazing, you know, these Zappa lines or the Chick lines and stuff. But this was really about sonically, what does it sound like? What is it, you know, how do you, so I love that guitar.
It's kind of bit, you know, back to the roots, you know, right? Like the, you know, back to the roots, really, you know, the original sound, and not this. There were several years, you know, where there was this totally over-processed guitar sounds, right? You know, where you know, every guitar player had a kind of a big rack of, you know, with amps and effects.
Mine is right over there. And it hasn't been open for like 10 years, you know. I'd like to put like a refrigerator in it, or maybe a fish finder, like that.
But that's also something that came back, you know, that nowadays, you know, it's the new cool is having just, you know, kind of an old-fashioned, you know, Fender or whatever amp, and, you know, some boards, you know, mainly preferably analog, and then, you know, do great sounds. I think that's a good renaissance, I think.
I think so too. I think it really is. It's a really it puts it back in the hand of the player. You know, there are a lot of gizmos you can get where you can like, look at what I can do. I can play one note and this amazing cascade of stuff happens. But it's like,
Yeah.
but, you know, if I have a machine that'll fix my bad pitch and my bad time, is that good? You know, I think it's great to like, you know, because you get somebody like Mike Landau or my old friend Bill Frisell, who like, it's all about the touch. It's about their touch and you know,
Right.
And it's, or Jeff Beck, for God's sake, you know, all these guys are doing all this like shredding and stuff. And Jeff Beck, I saw him a couple of years ago, and he comes out with a Strat plugged straight into a Marshall, and he doesn't even have a pick. And he's killing everybody, just like because of the notes he picks and where he places them and the sound he gets out of the note. It's like, it's masterful, really great.
Yeah, I think there was I think that there was on Rick Beato's show. There was one. I forgot the name of the guitar players. Were also one of these studio players that did a kind of a rant about, you know, this way in studios that destroys, you know, the dynamics and everything in guitar playing, just putting everything on autotune and on the grid and stuff like that. But as said, I think it's coming back. You know, it's good to see that this is also coming back in pop music and not only in this kind of, you know, contemporary niche jazz, whatever we call it, you know.
Well, luckily, you know, music has always been, it's constantly changing, you know, and styles and tastes change, and that's good. It's not all in one direction all the time, you know, and I think the day will come where this whole, you know, and I know I sound like a codger when I say this, but the whole auto-tune fixing everything and everything is like just like on the beat, like you say, it's like it's kind of predictable. To me, it's like there's been some gigs I've done where the players are really good and it's really a challenge to play through the music, but it's one flavor all night. It's like, you know, okay, here's the song. It's just, you know, starts with this kind of spacey vamp, and then there's you know, a really weird head that we play, and then we just go crazy. Just go play everything you can think of. And then we play the head, and then we end with the weird vamp. You know, okay, next song starts with a weird vamp. Then there's a weird head that we play, and then everybody go completely crazy. And it's like after about 3 of these, I'm ready to pack up my stuff and go, because it's like this is like sitting down to a dinner where everything is one flavor. And everything is vanilla, or everything is beef. You know, it's like it becomes the same, and that's why I'm so respectful of people like James Taylor or Boz or not. There's too many of them to name, where they appreciate contrast. Because Weather Report, for God's sake, there'll be some who you put those records on, it sounds like it was recorded tomorrow. You know, a lot of it, you know, it was like, and there'll be a song that's completely so dense and incredibly dense and intense. And the next thing is the most spacious ballad you ever heard. Yeah. And it's like, it makes both better because there's the contrast.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to avoid the sameness.
But technically, I think we are at a point where you have the chance to pick best of both worlds. You can have your analog instrument as a keyboarder, like a Fender Rhodes piano or whatever, and you can pick some digital things like a laptop computer where you have your Logic, Pro Tools, whatever, and you can produce your records on your desk or in your sleeping room. As a guitar player, you have the chance. I think it helps in the studio when you have things like the Camper or whatever, where amps are simulated.
Yeah,
depends on what you're doing. When you do your own record and you know how. But when you go into the studio and you don't know what might be the situation, what songs do I play, maybe a modern tool can help. What do you think?
Absolutely. These are like brushes in an artist's palette, you know. But you don't want to get like completely absorbed in the brushes either. You know, you want to have, it's like if music is to express something, like to express feelings or experiences, well, then you should have some experiences too, so that you have something to express, because otherwise it's like, it's, yeah, like I said, my favorite music, there's all kinds of things in there that are like, some people would think are mistakes, but it's like it's the humanity in it, and it's like great art, like great paintings. It's like I'm not looking for something that looks exactly like the object. I want to, in fact, or a great movie. It's like I'm a kind of a fanatic about if I'm going to go see a movie, I don't want to know anything about it. Don't tell me anything about where it starts, what the situation is, what I don't want to know that.
I want to enjoy
It's
it.
like a painting. I want to see how it hits me. It's like if they were going to say, yeah, you're going to go see the Mona Lisa. It's this lady, and she's got on a black dress, and she's got this weird smile. It's like, you just ruined the painting. I was going to see.
You will never get that out of your head.
Yeah, it's like this. That's you know. I don't want to know. I don't want to know that stuff. But I like your idea about the palette, because yeah, they're different. They're different places, and they just treat it differently.
I think that's something, at least when I listen, to the tracks from your album, which is kind of the story. That all these tracks on your album is kind of this song style and having kind of this shape. It's not this it's, let's say the not typical, but this type of fusion thing. Hey, here's another complex song. It's really songs with different vibes, and that's something I really like on your album.
Thank you. Well, I really want to. I love the idea of the composition, trying to make the composition the center of interest, instead of that way. The soloing is just like some great frosting on a cake, but it's not. You don't want to sit down and eat frosting. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's like, it's like there's some music that I hear where it's all about this soloing, and it's like, the parade of soloists, and it's like the most amazing solo. And it's like, that doesn't move me as much as it used to. It's like, what I really want to hear is like the composition. And then when the soloing happens, it's like, that's really fantastic. Mm-hmm. But if the whole night is about soloing, it's not, it doesn't move me like it used to.
Yeah. But on your album, is there a song, or maybe we talked about it? It's a long list of great musicians that you got to play on this album and on this song. Is there something a special song that was really something special for you to bring, or a special musician that you said, okay, let's try to find a way to get this or her, on this record? Is there something like this?
You mean like to write the song around a person?
Yeah, just to get somebody special where you may have thought, okay, let's try to get this. This guy, to play. It would be so great to have him because of the vibe of the song or something like that.
Well, I was so just delighted when my friend Mike Shapiro got Airto to play on that song, Mr. Moriera, which obviously was written for Airto.
That's obvious.
Because he was like, he was so important to the stuff I listened to when I started out. I mean, he was on everything that made me want to play the first Weather Report, the first Return to Forever, first two, the John McLaughlin My Goals Beyond record, this great Keith Jarrett record called Expectations that just blew the top of my head off. He was there for all this stuff, and he was like a really seminal figure. Like he really, so that meant a lot. And I didn't even know it was coming. So that
okay, really,
it's kind of a reverse of what you said.
So, but it's so great. It's so great to hear that, because that's closing the loop to what you started to tell us in the beginning of the interview here, but it's all this inspiration, and now you have this guy playing on your record, you know, that's perfectly closing.
That's always been like, yeah, in the back of my head. I mean, being able to play with Chick and being able to play, like, when I first came to Los Angeles, I worked for a while with Benny Maupin, the bass clarinetist and saxophone player. And it was like, you know the sound of that instrument. He would start, I would just like stare like, oh my God, I can't believe the sound. You're that guy, you know, because it really changed my life. And it's like, there's no way I could ever pay that back. It's like, I was at a thing a while ago, I had done a bunch of work with a guy in Rochester, New York. And they were honoring him and a bunch of Rochester people, one of whom was Steve Gadd and also Tony Levin. Mm-hmm. And they were playing there with their group. And there were about, 10 or 15 different acts. And at some point, Steve Gadd band, that trio, they said, now we're going to bring out our special guest, Paul Simon. And Paul Simon comes out. And, people are going nuts, including me, even though I kind of knew he was going to be there. And he goes to the microphone. He says, are there any requests? And, of course, it's Steve Gadd. So the audience starts yelling out, 50 ways to leave your liver, 50 ways. And he waits for it to die down. And Paul goes, we don't do requests.
Oh, that's mean.
but it was so funny. And then backstage, he's standing there, and I just had to fight the urge to go gush all over him, because it was like, man, that album Bookends completely changed my life. It was like, I have a better life because of what you guys did, and thank you. But it's like, he probably hears this stuff all the time, so I didn't say anything. I didn't want to gush on him. I fight that it's not, I've heard it from many people, it's not a good thing to have, your heroes.
But if you don't mind, should we listen a snippet from that song, Mr. Moriera?
Sure.
And I will. So I'm not sure if people can pre-order on the website of the record label, or it's just I don't know. But I will
Probably.
put the. So maybe people can check if there's a pre-order. I will put the link, and let's hear Mr. Moriera.
This song I did right here in this room. I actually started. I have my father's old drum machine, like a really simple push button, like 8 buttons, and like mashed them down, and I played with that, and I was playing with this song, and I played some guitars on it, and then I played bass on it, and then I sang a little on it, and I sent it to my friend Shapiro, and he took it and kept some of the drum machine. It's on the front. And
and he's also playing on that one, I think. And who else is on that track? Need to check.
Mike did some of this in the Philippines. There's vocals and a key.
That's the one. Yeah, there's some vocals on it as well. So let's listen a second.
Check
So you were also singing on that one, right?
Yes. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I like I like the fact that there's a lot of different kinds of music on this record. Like this one is it is what it is. And then the one we played earlier, the Reindeer, is like, that's its own more and more aggressive thing. And then there's some ballads on here that I really like. I personally love variety, And so some people would say, well, it should be a blues record or it should be a fusion record. Or it's like, no, not to me. I love when I'm listening to music around the house, it's like Patsy Cline and Hendrix and Prokofiev and Hank Williams, it's like, it could be, I love variety. So hopefully somebody else does too.
Awesome.
We do.
You just brought a bass guitar in.
Yeah, this bass here, this old, this Mexican Fender Precision. I love playing bass. I learned so much more playing bass. Well, not more, but I learned a lot about chords. Like the bass is so powerful. I mean, everybody can be playing a C chord, and if the bass plays A, it's an A minor chord now. It's really powerful.
Yeah.
It's like it drives, it changes everything.
Really cool. So your album will be released in March this year in 6 weeks or so.
Yes.
And then everybody can download it or order it on your website.
Yes.
And where else can we get the album?
Well, I think they'll be putting it on all all kinds of formats on the Amazons and on the this and that and on my website, the Mike Miller Guitarist. I'll be selling them some there too, and I made some so I could sell it to gigs, because that's a lot of times that's where I'll buy a recording because I know the money's going to go to the people who are.
I think that's
music.
Yeah, that's what we heard a lot of times. That nowadays, if you really physically have CDs, the place to sell it is shows. That's what a lot of people tell us, that they sell, let's say 20 at Amazon and 500 at shows. And I've always encouraged people, if you go to a show, even you're not a super fan of the music and you had a good evening, buy the album, give it a second listen, and give the contribution to the musicians and bands that created it. That's the best way to do it, and
right.
the 10 bucks for the album, on top of a cheap, ticket. Come on,
it's like you can't even really get a good sandwich for 10 bucks.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's a good
thing to
support now, especially in this time, where some of the streaming platforms, don't want to pay. I mean, just look what happened with Spotify and Neil Young.
Oh, that was in the news yesterday, right? Yeah.
That's like, oh, you guys are going to be kidding me. But,
I didn't read it.
I'll try not to burn any bridges while I'm standing on the bridge. That's probably a good idea, huh?
I don't know anything about it, Neil Young and Spotify.
I think he quit with Spotify and put everything off or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, he didn't. They've got this guy who does a podcast that has been spreading a lot of disinformation and misinformation about all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And he got fed up and said, I'm going to, you can have that guy or you can have me, but you can't have both. So if you're going to keep him on, I'm going to pull my music. And he did.
Cool. I like straight decisions.
Yeah, and he's another guy. There's another guy who, like, the stuff I like of Neil Young, I really, really like it. There's stuff that I don't listen to that doesn't get me, but the stuff that does, it really, really resonates, and it's like, that's it doesn't a lot of things in the world don't need my approval to exist. You know what I mean? Like when Neil goes to take a solo with that trebly White Falcon guitar with splitting your head into, it doesn't really need me to say whether it's good or not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a force in it unto itself. So
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
So, but
thanks for having me on. Are we running out of stuff?
actually,
No,
yeah,
we
but
could talk forever.
we can talk forever. I think we need to come to see you live playing. Hopefully, let's keep fingers crossed that this year we talked about that in the pre-talk. That we all hope that the situation this year will evolve to a better stage, and really live music and everything is really coming back to a level that you also can or will be able to present your album live. Not sure if you have this in mind, but that would be.
Oh yes, I would love to come play. I'm really looking forward to things opening up some and being able to show up. Like after this long break with Boz Scaggs, we stopped playing in November. God, it was like 2019 was the last real gig we did, and then to sit for so long. And we finally did this 5-week tour, and I just felt like, oh my God, to play music with people, for people, I want it back.
Yeah, I want to have it back. Everybody wants to have it back, so let's keep fingers crossed. But first, in March, everybody should, buy your stuff, the great album. In our show notes, everybody can see the links to your website and to the record label. And thanks so much, for the time. Talk about, your history, your music, and your album. It was really great.
Thank you, George and Ralph. I really appreciate the chance to do this, and it was nice talking to you.
We are very proud to have had you in our web
small show.
And everybody go out and listen to the older records from Mike also, and see what you can find to your liking.
Okay, thanks so much, and keep in touch, and all the success for playing live and the album.
Thank you, and you guys too. Be safe.
Stay healthy.
That's the plan.
Yeah. Cool.
Bye.